Hi everyone. Today is my last Instagram live for this week, and today I'll be talking with my dear friend Mio Strong, and she is actually the director of my foundation's Smart Defense course, a trauma-informed self-defense class, but she is also just an incredible human being. She is the reigning world champion for her weight group in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She is just such a powerful force for good in our world. I am so excited to have her on today. And before I get going, I just want to look back over the week for a second, talk about why this is so important. I came to deciding to create this course on wholehearted consent because as I have been an advocate in the anti-sexual violence field, anti-sexual exploitation for, about 20 years now, I have come across so many victims and survivors who have shared their stories with me and how they said at the time they didn't recognize what was happening to them was rape or was sexual violence, or somehow they felt guilty, or it was somehow their fault for what had happened to them because they didn't fight back, or they didn't scream, or they didn't, claw someone's eyes out. And that honestly broke my heart because being a survivor of sexual violence myself, it's devastating. It's so difficult. And then to carry that extra weight of thinking that somehow your actions brought on what happened to you is so unfair. And so I felt like we're not doing a good enough job of teaching everybody, but specifically like our young adults, our high schoolers, our junior high students, moving on kind of into the next stages of their life, so that when they get into those relationships and do become intimate, that they don't understand what's happened to them and then they just feel guilt. So that's why I really wanted to create this wholehearted consent course, and just kind of a reminder, or if you missed my explanation on it the other day, it's a course, it's based on 6 modules, and the first module, I talk a lot about my story, I talk a lot about how I got to this point, why this is important. The second module, I really go into definitions, which is interesting because there's not really a consistent definition of what consent is across the United States. There's always some variation, and that's really important because if you're in a relationship with someone and your mind of wholehearted consent is I'm saying yes with my mouth, I'm saying like yes with my heart, like my actions, my body, my mind, we're all in accord with each other, then that means yes. Whereas someone else being silent might be like, well, she didn't say no, so that's good. And having those different definitions of what you think consent is can be, it can lead to really difficult situations. So talking about what both of your expectations are when it comes to consent is really important. The third module is really exploring yourself. It's about living authentically. It's looking back, figuring out like who you are, what you stand for. It is a lot of kind of self-introspection. And then based on that, the fourth module is creating your values and your boundaries and figuring out what you're okay with, what you're not okay with. Yes, you can be like, well, how can you know what you're okay with if you haven't experienced? And like to some point, I would agree with that, but also I know that I don't need to try meth to know that I'm not okay with it. I'm not going to do that. Or I know I'm not going to murder someone. I've never done that. I'm not going to. That's a boundary that I don't need to experience to know I'm not going to do. So, I do believe that there are boundaries that we can set in place totally without experiencing them. We just already know. And given that self-introspection, I think we really can get really good grounds on what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. The fifth module, which I think is incredibly important because it's so hard, and that is being able to say yes or no and really mean it, being able to effectively communicate what your boundaries are or what you are okay with. I think that can be so difficult, especially like if you've always been taught to be kind or to be polite or to be respectful, Or, I mean, I know for me, like service was a huge thing in my family growing up. Like my grandparents talked about service, my parents talked about service. I mean, my parents were always like, you know, you should always leave a place better than you find it. Like we all hope we leave the world a better place when we die than when we came to it. And so sometimes if that's the way you've been raised, if that's like the mentality that you've been raised in, sometimes it's really hard to say no, especially if you're feeling like you're disappointing someone else, or if you are letting someone else down. That can be so hard. Or if you really like someone, which leads into the last module, which is where we talk about power dynamics within relationships and why they're important, because not every relationship as easy as yes or no or black and white. I mean, sometimes it can be really, really difficult to navigate. And some of those things that can play into effect on that is maybe age or experience or influence or power or money, or, I mean, it can be anything. And so it's really important to look at your decisions, and when you are giving your wholehearted consent, like, is this really wholehearted, or are you doing it because you feel like you have to, or because you feel like if you don't, you know, something will go wrong. So that was that is the brief outline of what my course is all about. And this month, the whole month of June, we're giving about 30% off. It's in the link in my bio. It's wholehearted consent. And if you just type consent into like the discount code box, that's how you get 30% off. Anyways, I am now going to be adding in one of my favorite people. Did it right? We are talking about consent, why it's so important, especially in here we go, thank you, but especially like in Mio's world, and how really having the skills of self-defense behind you can really help you feel confident and empowered in backing up your yeses or backing up your nos, and holding your boundaries and feeling safe as you go through your life. So Mio, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so great. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
Good. My kids said, "Look, Mom, you have makeup on. It must be something important." So I'm excited to be here.
I mean, you look beautiful. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good subject, and I loved listening about the wholehearted consent package and modules, and I think that was something that we were missing out there in the market, and I'm so glad you put it out there.
Well, and it's just crazy because, I mean, I feel like you know me pretty well, Mio, but I feel like the vast majority of at least my professional life, my passion in life is based around like sexual assault prevention, coming from the world of preventing human trafficking, abuse, violence. And so when I came into this world of wanting to create this course around consent, and as I started researching it and talking with the different experts, I mean, it really, like, honestly, it helped me realize how consent really plays a part in every aspect of our life, but how in the world it's so easy to like completely disregard other people's consent or disregard our own boundaries because we want an end goal. So we just push aside what actually is meaningful to us. And creating this culture of consent is actually so important. And so thank you for being here again.
Yeah, I'm excited. And actually consent is something that goes really hand in hand with boundary setting. And for self-defense in the martial arts community and the combat sports community, it's really important that communication is there. And so understanding your boundaries will help you understand your consent, which will help you communicate clearer, which then gives you the opportunity for no miscommunication, for no boundary pushing that you can't enforce. But it's really just comes down to education. So that's why I think your modules are so powerful. We also talk a lot about consent T. It's a video on YouTube. In all of our classes, we go over that. And I'm surprised at how many people just maybe have some misunderstandings about consent. Like for one, that's a common thing that I run into is that you can actually change what your mind at any point and in any act, and just because you consent to one thing one day doesn't mean you're consenting to it for the rest of your relationship, the rest of your life. So really just educating people. That's true.
That's such an important topic to bring up. And I feel like we talk a lot about that in my wholehearted consent course, because you're absolutely right. I mean, like sometimes, like it's so true. I mean, I'm just thinking of people who have said, you know, like I said yes to going on a date with this person, and then like it spiraled out of control and it ended up me like getting stuck like in their bed, and me having sex when I wasn't ready or wasn't willing to. So I think that's such a great point that you bring up. I mean, consent can totally be withdrawn at any point, and you don't have to feel guilty or ashamed of withdrawing your consent. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And actually, I have to say, like, when you first like did some training with me, like it's pretty it's intense, you know, like you like have placed your hands on my neck before, and like nobody touches my neck, and so it can be like quite like jarring. But I've always so appreciated how you've been like, okay, Elizabeth, like I'm going to place my hands on your neck, are you ready? And then it's always like, tap me if you're done, tap me, or like you'll tap me if like I'm practicing to move on you and you're like, okay, that's enough, and you tap out. And I think that is such a strong practice of consent. I feel like that's meant a lot to me, and I think it really helped me understand that like when you go into the martial arts world or the combative sports world, like consent is such a huge part of it. It's not just beating the crap out of another person.
Yeah, because you want to be able to have healthy training partners to continue training. And honestly, the best way that I can educate people on consent is by modeling that behavior myself. I do that at home, I do that at work, and especially in self-defense classes. You know, like you mentioned, choking, even if you have no trauma in your past, that act alone of somebody else putting their hands on your throat in an aggressive manner can be jarring. It can send you into like a little bit of a panic. And so understanding if they are ready or not. And we always say like wholehearted consent. This isn't half consent. If they're saying, I guess, sure, you can put your hands on my throat, then we don't proceed. As coaches, we ask our students not to proceed either, because we want it to be wholehearted consent. We want it to be enthusiastic. We want you to say, yes, I'm 100% ready for this. And then we proceed. And then there's other things in place that we have to keep us safe, right? The tap you mentioned. So those of you that are joining us that aren't familiar with the martial arts world, there's something called tapping out. It's like a safe word. It's what we use, and there's a universal respect for the tap. And we actually say that all the time at home. My daughters, I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and this is one of my besties, little sweeties with me. But we practice that, and we say, if somebody taps at any point, babe, come get the baby. If somebody taps at any point, you respect that no matter what. And the way that we model that at home is, so my 16-year-old and 13-year-old, they spar, they grapple, they do all the things. But sometimes it's not on the mat. Sometimes it's just, out at dinner. Sometimes it's just out, on a family vacation, and they could be even mad at each other. But if somebody taps in our house, you respect that no matter what, because that is a way to keep ourselves safe. And that's also, just modeling healthy behavior and giving them a way to, understand that they do have a way to push their limits, but in a safe way.
How do you think, I mean, like I guess I can speak for myself personally, like as I've done smart defense with you, and as like you've walked me through like the movements, I've always felt afterwards, I'm like, I am strong, like I can do this, like I know how to strike someone, or I know how to do this. And I think that is so powerful. And especially like, once again, just like given my past and kind of the world that you and I live in on kind of on a day-to-day basis, where I mean you are thinking about like your bodily safety all the time and what like potential repercussions there could be if someone's not respecting your boundaries. I mean, like I'm sure you think about it, but like if I go running outside, like I think about the route that I'm going to take in my head, and like I think about what I'm going to wear, and I think about like, okay, like who's running around me, or like I'm just like, I very much pay attention to who's running around me. I mean, like there's a lot of things that I think about because I want to make sure that I stay safe. And but as I like plan these days, I mean, knowing that like before I go through go on my run or something, I also think about, okay, like if someone comes up behind me, like what am I going to do? Like what has Mio taught me? Like what has Mio practiced with me? I mean, like those are very normal thoughts for me. Or like if I'm out like shopping, or I mean, I'm like the last person who wants to leave my house at night if it's dark. Like I'm like, oh, it's dark, the sun's going down, it's time for me to go down, it's time for me to go to my bed. But like if I have to run to like the store for a gallon of milk, okay, like I'm parking under the light, I'm parking close to the front door. But I'm also like, okay, well, what would happen if someone came up to me, and like I sit there and I think about what you've taught me, and I know that's made a lot of difference to me. But like, do you feel like all of your training and all of your expertise, and as you've taught this to other people, do you feel like it definitely has empowered you, has empowered the other students who have come through Smart Defense to be able to practice holding their boundaries a little bit better?
Oh, 110%. And I actually feel like it comes from a few different areas. One is just the daily practice. Like every one of our coaches practices what we preach in the verbalization and the education, but also the physical awareness. And one thing that I say to every single class that I just want to make sure I get in this video is that like no matter how much training you have, no matter how much education you have, it's never, ever, ever the fault of the victim. The responsibility always lies solely on the perpetrator's shoulders. So I do always want people to be aware and to lower their risk in ways that are within their control. But it's really important to understand too that you know, we're not the perpetrators. So for true prevention to happen, it's got to come from the perpetrator. We can mitigate our risk and we can lower our risk by situational awareness, bystander awareness, stating clear boundaries, you know, like you said, running. So give your route to Matthew so he knows like when I'm supposed to be gone for 2 hours because you're a crazy person and you like to run long distances. And then I'll be back, this is when I'm supposed to be back. I'm going to share my GPS location. I'm going to run with only one earbud in. And like for me, when I go trail running, I always carry a mace, a mag light on my hydration belt. But the most important thing too is like being aware of your surroundings, where is your focus, right? A lot of us have to get tunnel vision to run. If you do that, do it on a treadmill in your home.
Although I have to say, like, so I also have a treadmill that I do a lot of running on my treadmill, and it's in like this little basement room. Like it's pretty dark in there. There are no windows. It's like completely boxed in. And I get so into the groove that like if my husband gets home from work and I'm running on, or he's leaving in the morning and I'm not expecting him, honestly, sometimes he scares me so much I almost fall off the treadmill because I get into the tunnel, like the tunnel vision, because I don't think anyone's going to disturb me. So maybe don't lose complete awareness because I don't want anyone to have an accident on the treadmill.
Yes. Well, and too, like the person who startles you is at risk of getting palm strikes in the face. I came around the corner the other night. My husband was working in his metal shop and he didn't hear me. He had earbuds in because he was grinding and it was super loud. And I know to like, I started throwing stuff at him because he will turn around and just strike out of like being defensive, right? Self-defense. You want to react. But yeah, so the people that startle, Matthew should know. You should stomp around heavily before he comes in and surprises you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always like,
Yep.
But no, and I love also that you touched back on like, even if you're trained, even if you've been through this training, it's never your fault. Like freezing is such a natural response. Like Like,
Yeah.
I know my first response is still to freeze. Like, even if Matthew does come in, and Matthew's my husband for anyone who's wondering, even if Matthew does come in and like surprise me when on the tread, honestly, my first reaction is not to strike him in the face, which maybe means I should go through training a few more times. But it is
Okay.
to freeze. That is totally my first response.
And I believe that is the most common trauma response or startle reflex is to freeze. And I've kind of adapted mine over the years. Mine used to be to like immediately throw something. Now it's like blocking, framing, and backing out. Like no matter what's happening, like I'm always like, whoa, 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 and I back out and create space. And I 110% think that's because that's what I do every day when I'm teaching self-defense, right? We never teach our students to, you know, stand their ground and turn around and fight and brawl and try and, you know, stand and fight. Essentially, we just want some sort of distraction, some sort of, you know, pain compliance that buys you time to create space and distance to get to safety. The whole point is get to safety.
Totally. I agree completely with you. And actually, I had an opportunity to talk to my sweet sister, Mary Catherine. Most of you, Mio, you definitely know her. But maybe many of you also remember her from my story. She was in the bed next to me as I was being kidnapped. She's the one that watched me be kidnapped. She's about 5 years younger than me. So she was only like, 8, 9 years old at the time that I was kidnapped. She watched me be kidnapped. She was the one that then went in and woke up my parents and alerted my parents to telling them that I was gone, that I'd been taken. And then it was actually her who like connected the dots on who the person was who kidnapped me. So not only was she the one to alert my parents that I had been kidnapped, but she was also the one that ultimately led to putting out the name of the person who had kidnapped me, which led to my rescue. So she's already like a hero in my book, and I love and adore her. But we were talking the other day, and she just is buying a new home for her, and she was like, "Oh, Elizabeth, like I'm gonna get a dog." And I was like, "Oh," she's like, "Yeah, I just want to feel safe in my own home. Now I'm gonna be living by myself. I'm gonna get a dog." I was like, "Oh, like dogs are great security. Like I have a dog. I mean, I don't know how much security he is, but I have a dog, and he's very loud, which that is actually really good." And I was like, "What kind of dog are you getting?" And she was like, "Oh, I've put a I've I've put a deposit on a Rhodesian Ridgeback." And I was like, are you talking about like the lion hunter dogs? And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Because if anyone comes into my house, I want them to like totally like tear them apart. Or if anyone's like crossing a boundary or like hurting me, I want this dog to protect my life." And I was like, I totally understand it. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad idea at all. Like I definitely want you to feel safe. I definitely want you to like take precautions, safety precautions. I was like, but like, are you sure this is the best dog? Because like they require a lot of, like, I don't have a Rhodesian Ridgeback. I'm not an expert on Rhodesian Ridgebacks, but I feel like I've heard enough about them that they take like a lot of exercising and a lot of interaction, or else they can become very destructive to your property. And she's like, "Yeah," she's like, "That's true." And I was like, "Well, like you are a special needs teacher. You work with special needs children. Like you work with the schools. Like you're gone all day long. Like what are you gonna do while you're gone?" She's like, "Well, I'll just have to put the dog in a kennel." And I was like, "And you're gonna be working like 45 minutes away from your home. Like that's almost 10 hours a day. That's a long time to leave a dog in a kennel. Like, are you sure?" Like at the end of the day, like Mio's taught me this, Smart Defense has taught me this, is that it's not so much that you need to like tear a person apart. It's about creating opportunities to get away to safety. So even if you've got like maybe a lesser maintenance dog, even just like a small lazy yappy dog,
Yeah.
like they could totally create enough of a distraction to give you the opportunity to get away. That's what you need to do. You just need an opportunity to get away. I mean, being able to like beat into a pulp, that's awesome, fantastic. But like, I think that also takes a lot of practice and a lot of years. So your best chances are to create a distraction to get away.
Yeah. Well, and I'll actually text her because I have a lot of friends in like the military dog world, and because there's kind of a big rush of people getting Belgian Malinois or like the war dogs, and not that that's what Mary Catherine's doing, but it is definitely like you have to understand what you're getting into. And for somebody like Mary Catherine, what I would recommend is like a Ring doorbell and an older rescue dog, right? Because the point is to give you time to alert you. And dogs, you know, intuitions, they're amazing. And yeah, anything with volume. It's just like what we say, you know, in Smart Defense. If you're effective at using your voice at large volumes, 50% of attacks stop if you just use your voice. So that includes, you know, volume, it includes what you're saying, it includes how you're saying it. And so maybe like we personally have this mutt and she's like 11, but she barks and alerts us, right? And that's really all I need, especially because Mary Catherine has a cute little baby who's probably not a little baby anymore. But so taking all of that into account is very important. But the need and the feeling and the natural desire to put all sorts of implements in place to keep yourself safe is the right track, right? If you are feeling uneasy and uncomfortable in a new home, in a new neighborhood, especially as a, you know, an adult female living alone with children or a child, that you need to listen to that intuition. And you need to, you know, just do your research and try and take every aspect of your life into account. And the thing with dogs is like you really have to integrate them into your daily life. So if she's not able to take the dog with her to work, that changes the type of dog that's right for her, right? But paying attention to that intuition is wonderful. And I saw someone commented earlier about tell her to get mace. Mace is an amazing tool. I carry it. My 16-year-old carries it. What I recommend is like police grade pepper fogger or pepper gel. The difference is mace like dissipates and can blow back on you depending on when you're using it or where you're using it. Costco sells a really great mace fogger. You can also like get on Amazon or any of the tactical supply stores and order the gel. The gel to me is probably the least risk. Now, I myself have been maced a couple of times. That's for another day, another Instagram live. And the thing I love about mace is, yes, it does incapacitate you, but it's not lethal. So even if it gets taken away from you, the maximum amount of damage that can be done to you is bad, but it's not as bad as, you know, death.
Yeah, totally. Definitely agree with you on that.
I've been trying to pay attention to like the comments and the questions.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah, but amazing. So talking about consent and bringing it back to how do we model that behavior, I loved what your guest yesterday said. In fact, I clicked off of the live to order the book and then clicked back on the live, the X plan. So I'm just, yeah, police grade mace is amazing. So I'm just here to say the X plan for those of you with teenage daughters or sons, teenagers in general. I ordered that and all the reviews I've read, like I'm really, really excited to dive into that and to create a safety plan with my teens because they can be really good at setting boundaries. They can be really good at communicating consent or non-consent, but still having a backup and a backup and a backup is the best way to keep ourselves and our kiddos safe. In fact, I have 2 girlfriends right now that are newly back on the dating scene. They share their location with me. I know exactly who, when, where, what. They take a picture of their license plate. They have a FaceTime call first. Like, you name it, they're putting steps into place to help them feel safer because not everybody respects consent. And that's where this, you know, martial arts, combatives training comes in. And you can do combatives training from something as small as like learning how to properly break fall is a really, really important thing to know, to bladed weapons and blunt force weapons and firearms, like you name it. There's a huge spectrum of ways to train, and it just depends on what's right for you. And my biggest thing is whatever is right for you, make sure you prioritize it, because it's a perishable skill. Like if you're not practicing, if you're not drilling, if you're not integrating that into your day-to-day life, you're doing yourself a disservice. Like you need to be able to really integrate it in life. Same thing with consent. I say all the time, I have not this cutie that was here with me today, but I have a 5-year-old nephew that I watch every now and then. And I'm constantly like, may I pick you up? May I hug you? May I help you at the potty? May I X, Y, and Z, right? And modeling that behavior for getting his own consent and helping him understand that he has a right to who doesn't and does touch their body. But I do love like how your guest earlier this week, like, you still have to take a bath, but
Yes, totally.
you sit on Uncle Jimmy's lap if you don't want to. So modeling that is super important too as adults.
And sorry for the shaking. My husband had a delivery I had to open the door for, so I'm back stationary again. But yes, everything you said, and like kind of like I mentioned earlier, to your perishable skill point, clearly I need to come train with you again, because when I'm on the treadmill, I'm still freezing and almost falling off.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I love that question. Are you comfortable with me hugging you? I actually do that with adults. In fact, when we were just at that, we didn't do the summit. What was the Boulder Way Forward? Yeah, Boulder Way Forward conference. I had like the executive director of UCASA, and I was like, may I hug you? Like, I really wanted to make sure I was getting her consent for a picture before we just like threw our arms around each other. And in the martial arts world, it's a physical, especially in jiu-jitsu, there's no personal space, right? You're in between someone's legs, somebody is sitting on top of you, somebody can sit on top of your face and pin you. Like there's all sorts of very, very compromising positions that you're in. And every female that I train or coach or help or even just like interact with, I'm constantly saying like, you don't have to train with anybody you don't want to train. You don't have to drill with anybody. You don't have to take classes from anybody. You don't have to join a gym if you don't feel like they're respecting your boundaries. And it's hard to know what your boundaries are with jiu-jitsu until you get into the situation. But understanding that your boundaries can change, your consent can change at any point, and giving you the confidence and the tool set to change with it and to communicate that clearly, you're going to have a safer time on the mat. I'm not a large human, and there are huge like ex-college football players that I train with that I feel safer with than with the 16-year-old 150-pound kid. And the reason I feel safer with those larger athletes is because I feel like they listen to me, they respect me, and they are trained enough in jiu-jitsu to understand the exchange of power, because it really is a dynamic and an exchange of power. Same thing in smart defense. Like we do a lot of pressure testing. And so every time we pressure test, which is another reason why all of our coaches are trauma-informed trained, is they understand when they're pressure testing something, they know what to look for to be able to keep that person safe that may or may not understand what disassociation means, or what a true panic attack looks like, or what those trauma responses look like for them. So that consent and that communication is across the board in the martial arts world, but especially in jiu-jitsu. And there's kind of a funny joke amongst our guy friends. My husband's a retired MMA fighter and like a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So he and his buddies are very physical. Like when they see each other, they like go for underhooks, they go for overhooks. Like their love language is kind of this physicality. And mine is too, but I found that not all my friends are. And the only reason I found that out is because I started asking, right? I started saying, hey, is it okay? Like, I just really want to hug you. Or it's the same thing with pregnant people, right? May I touch your belly? Don't ever just walk up to a pregnant person and put your hands on their belly. That's like a cardinal no-no. But a lot of people don't know that. Even if it's your daughter, even if it's your friend, even if it's, you know, somebody that you assume would be okay with that, you really need to ask.
And I just noticed someone on here asked, what is pressure testing?
Oh, yeah. So pressure testing is like the best, safest way to be able to find out where your threshold is of you know, staying calm and thinking through and having your body do the correct move. So we pressure test things in baby steps. For example, we'll have myself or another coach, we'll go over the move, everybody's got it down, and then we'll say, okay, I'm going to increase my pressure. Like, so say when you and I do choke defense, if to start, I actually don't even cross my thumbs because that causes extra pressure. So I like monkey grip your throat and I go very, very gently. That's not a realistic look at what an actual choke is. So as partners and as trusted adults, I'll ask you, okay, I'm going to increase it 25%. Are you okay with that? Okay, so we increase it. Okay, I'm going to go 70%. How do you feel about that? And then we'll watch how that works, because you want to understand that those moves work in real life situations. And of course, there's no way to drill real life situations. So pressure testing is the closest thing we have. It's like sparring in cage fighting. Like everybody wants to have sparring rounds, but you also don't want to get knocked out because you want to be able to fight. That's what you're training for, is that big fight night. So pressure testing is something that I'm really passionate about, because you do get to see not only where your threshold is, like you mentioned earlier, like you come away with this huge sense of empowerment because you do get to go 110%. You do get to express physically everything we've been just drilling or training. And that's why we have our guys wear SWAT suits, or the Red Man suit, or the Bauer tactical suit. Like a lot of people know them by a lot of different names, but that suit keeps our male coaches safe and allows you to then really like, bam, I'm going to throw that elbow 100% at your face, because you have a soft padded helmet and a shield on to protect your noggin.
But good to bring up, like, if you're listening to this, or you come back and watch it, or you suggest it to someone else, like, maybe don't practice pressure testing by yourself or like with people who aren't trained. Like, definitely do it in a safe environment with someone who knows what they're doing and is padded and protected.
Yes. So I'll tell you like a really good example that comes up every class. Like inevitably we've taught a move. So we'll take grip breaks, for instance. Like when somebody tries to grab you and control you without your consent, that's a clear like violation. That's your boundaries. That's, you need to get away. And so we teach like some very effective techniques, but then we give you, okay, if A, B, and C don't work, here's D, E, and F. We want you to have this huge toolbox, because not every move works every time with every person. But one of those pressure testing theories is, so they'll go home and try it with their husband. They're like, I couldn't even get out. And I said, yeah, for sure. Because did you rip his testicle? Did you eye gouge him? We're not going to do that, right? We can't really pressure test that with a loved one that's not trained. So it's important that you do go through the motions and you get the body mechanics and the muscle memory down, but you definitely need to be prepared for like, hey, cute husband, I can't get out like with just the traditional way. I don't really want to eye gouge you, but that's what's next. So like communicating and understanding that. And actually the way the whole Smart Defense curriculum was revamped and remade is, my husband, like I mentioned before, is a retired professional fighter for over a decade. I trust him. I love him. We both train all the time. So we would take these different moves that are in our curriculum and I would say, all right, I'm ready for 80%. Come at me 80%. Then you come at me 80%. We try the moves. Whatever didn't work, out the window. Okay, 90%. Come at me 90%. Okay, and he would wear the protective gear and all the other stuff to keep himself safe. But that was a way for me to really feel comfortable that what we are teaching you is actually going to help you. There's a lot of garbage out there with self-defense, and I just wanted to do better. And this program, I'm so proud of it. I feel like it is the best thing out there.
And I noticed in the comments a little bit back, if I can just find it real quick, to the person who was disabled and in a robbery and attacked by 5 gang members. First of all, like, not your fault. Like, I'm so sorry. You did not deserve it. Like, you're not alone. Like, there's a whole community of like survivors who are here for you. And you're looking for someone to train with in I think you're in Minnesota, maybe. We are not yet in Minnesota, but like definitely follow the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, because there may be opportunities in the future where somehow we can train together.
Yes.
So,
and also email me, like if my email is just miyo@elizabethsmartfoundation.org. If I know somebody that I feel comfortable with that teaches, coaches, trains out there, I would be happy to make some introductions. Because you do have to be very, very picky about where you choose to train and who you choose to train with, based on the vulnerabilities that you're putting yourself in.
yes. So yes, please, like, don't give up. Don't give up, because I think, especially for me, like probably my favorite part of going through like the Smart Defense program is holding the mats. Like Mia will pair us up and like we'll take turns like holding mats for each other, and like for the other person to strike the mats or kick the mats. And like at the beginning of the course, I think it's always just amazing to kind of watch this transition from like feeling like really shy and like not confident in like maybe getting physical, to by the end of the course watching like how much empowered and how strong you actually all are, because I think we are actually all very, very strong. I think we're all a lot stronger than we think we are, and you don't have to be like totally ripped out of your mind to be effective when protecting yourself or giving yourself the opportunity to get away with. And as I've held the mats, what's so special for me is like watching this transition happen, where like maybe initially they're not really putting much effort or much force behind the strikes, but then by the end of like holding the mats, they're like, sometimes holding the mats is hard because like you're so strong. So don't give up. Don't walk away from this. Just keep looking, and hopefully we can either connect you to someone, or maybe we'll connect in the future. Who knows? I have high hopes. I have sky high hopes for Smart Defense.
Yes. Me too. And I've seen a few people disclose on our comment section, and when this posts in the content, let's put Rain's 800 number on there, because that is the best 24/7 opportunity for you to get support, to have somebody to help point you or connect you with the right people. And yes, and you can do it anonymously. 100%. There's an anonymous way to do it as well, because nobody is alone in this. There are so many survivors out there, and we oftentimes carry it for many, many years alone by ourselves, and we don't need to. There are people out there. They may not be within your circles already right now, but yes, the RAIN network is incredible and can connect you with a lot of good solid help.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll make sure that we add them in the notes to this video when I post it. So I feel like we've covered a ton of ground, and I feel like I could cover a ton more, but for the sake of time, just like a recap. I mean, understanding what consent is, understanding what your boundaries are, and practicing wholehearted consent can prevent a lot of bad things from happening. That being said, we can never like 100% guarantee prevention until perpetrators stop perpetrating. So like if you're wanting to learn more, if you're wanting to feel like you're being more educated in learning what your boundaries are, how to practice wholehearted consent, go to the link in my bio, and that's what it'll take you to the wholehearted consent course. where you can type in consent in the discount button, where you will get 30% off through June. If you are interested in Smart Defense, which everyone should be, go check out the Elizabeth Smart Foundation page, or go to elizabethsmartfoundation.org, where we have our Smart Defense classes and locations lined up.
And we
And
have an Instagram page that we just started, so it's ESF Smart Defense. So Elizabeth Smart Foundation Smart Defense, ESF Smart Defense. So we'll be posting tips and tricks on there, and also, you know, reach out, DM us if we have if you have questions, and or you need help finding resources. It's a heavy thing to carry, and you don't have to carry it by yourself.
okay. With that being said, thank you everyone, and thank you, Mio, and good luck.
Okay.